high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Talking Catholic. As you can tell, because it's me starting the podcast, I am by myself. I have no co-host this episode, so, if you want to click off, now's the time. Jen is hard at work, and Marianella is hard at work, and Carrie is the hardest working person in South Jersey when it comes to Catholic ministers. They're all at work. They're all doing things, and I'm stuck alone in the vault by myself, just with you guys. But don't worry, I brought in a couple of good guests who will actually do the bulk of the conversation. But I wanted to remind everybody, we talked last week with Father Jason Rocks that in the next couple of weeks and months, or through the month of November, rather, we're going to be focusing a lot on, funeral rites and how we pass, why we do certain things in the Catholic Church related to funerals and looking after the dead. And we're going to have a little bit of a few stories in there actually about looking after people who are in hospice and as they make their final moments towards the great beyond. And it's going to be a great series of articles in this month's Catholic Star Herald. So I encourage you to look at it. We've gotten, I sit on a couple of committees in the state of New Jersey, one of them being the New Jersey Catholic Conference's Public Policy Committee. And we were having a conversation, maybe 2 months ago, about how so many people, there's a number of people on that committee of well-seasoned people. And as they are now dealing with more funerals, they're going to more funerals where there are, usually non-Catholic funerals where there are a lot of peculiar things that they're seeing, and a lot of peculiar things that they're hearing. And when they go to funeral parlors and talk to funeral directors, there are now all of these options available. You can have people turned into, jewelry. You can have people shot into space. Basically, people moved all over the place. And there's a reason why in the Catholic Church we don't do that. And they're very good reasons, and they're very spiritual reasons, they're very biblical reasons, and they're reasons why we're kept together. So I would encourage you, if you haven't yet, check out last week's podcast, and then make sure you read the series of articles in the Catholic Star Herald, because I think you'll find them very enlightening. I certainly did, as someone who will no doubt have to look at this stuff in the near future. I think it's good to know now. And if you ever get an opportunity to have a conversation with a local funeral director, I've met a whole bunch of them, and they are some of the funniest human beings you've ever met. So don't be afraid of talking to your local funeral director. Ask them all sorts of peculiar questions. You'll get lots of very, very funny stories. In terms of Catholic burial, remember there's a certain reason why we do those things, and they're all good reasons, and they all harken back to our one-day reunification with our bodies. So anyway, we're actually going to talk on a completely different subject in this podcast. One not so, perhaps, sad. This one's actually quite joyful. The first week of November is National Vocations Week in the United States. And so we thought it was a good idea if we brought on two of our best vocations peoples, the director of vocations for the Diocese of Camden, Father Adam Cichoski, who also happens to be the rector of the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Camden. Welcome.
Good morning, Mike. So we're hopefully a little bit more fun to talk to than your local funeral director. So.
I don't know. They're pretty funny people, but
are.
We'll see. And then with him is the associate director for vocations and the priest secretary to Bishop Dennis Sullivan, Father Josh Nevitt.
Mike, vocations is dying to self, so we're going to have a great podcast today.
Wow, now I know why it's in November. Okay, now that makes so much sense. So the two of you we've had on separately a number of times. I think this is the first time we've had you on together.
Oh, I think we talked about Portugal, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
you were
did.
here together in Portugal. That's right. So that was the last time you guys were on, was after World Youth Day, and that was a great conversation, and we really appreciated that. So thank you for that. And you came back with great stories. But this time we want to talk about your job, really. But before we do that, I do want to note to the listeners is that this is an exciting podcast to just have the three of us here as three people who grew up in deep South Jersey and deep Gloucester County as a Franklinville, Clayton area. So we're all brothers.
We're all united.
Yeah, exactly. We're all Delsey Drive kids. So let's talk about vocations a little bit. Father Adam, you've been doing this for quite a while now, right?
Yeah, since 2019 I started.
Okay. And how many fellows have you sort of nurtured through the discernment process? And I mean in terms of not necessarily that are in seminary now, but who have reached out and, been interested.
Yeah, it's hard to say because we get a lot of people that reach out, sometimes for different reasons, different motives, I guess you would say would be the word. So we help the men kind of figure out what is possible, what's not possible, and where is God in their life. And that's really the main job, I think, of a vocation director, is to help that person be more in contact with God through prayer, through discernment of figuring out how God is calling them. So a lot of times it is walking with a man and he begins to see that, maybe this was just something he thought would be an escape or something that he thought would be an easier route, that things weren't working out in another way of life, and that he wanted to think about this. But when they see the work that goes into it, when they see the preparation that goes into it, it's a lot. And it shows, I think, our seriousness of this vocation. And, we're blessed with a good vocation advisory board and these lay men and women and priests and deacons of our diocese that help, again, discern if a man is being called to the seminary. So if they apply, it's not just me or Father Josh that's making that decision. It's a whole board of people coming together, praying about it, but discussing it. And there's a lot of different aspects that go into it. So I can't really think of the number of men that have come through the office, have reached out to me. But, it's been a good number where we can just try to plug them into the parish. And I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to get them involved in ministries in their home parish to do, quote unquote, priestly things that would be, like being a lector, like being an altar server, things that, again, get us close to the altar and get us some experience of what it means to serve God's people in this ministry. So, it's hard to say the number, but I think a lot have come through and hopefully, have been helped, have discerned truly where God is in their life and how they can follow him to the best of their own ability.
We've talked about vocations quite a bit on this podcast over the years. And, that's the refrain that comes up every single time, is that it's a process, right? Mm-hmm. It's sort of a, learning of self and where you are. Now, what's interesting is that the two of you supposedly have very unique aspects into your work in the vocations office. You now are pretty much focused on the guys who are in seminary, whereas you, Father Josh, have the benefit of, I guess, being the vocations recruiter.
Recruiter is a good word for it. Recruiter, promoter. So my role is much more with the guys who are thinking about entering the seminary, and helping to get word out there. So the promoter would be a good word for it. And, when I can go to parishes and preach about vocations, going to the high schools to raise awareness about religious vocations, which really is what this week of National Vocations Awareness Week is about, to raise awareness about the possibility of priesthood and religious life. I think most people in the world, generally in the world, and maybe even many Catholics, are shocked to realize that God still calls people to be priests, to be religious women, and enter convents. They're really shocked by that, but God still calls. And so it's educating about that. It's encouraging prayer about that from our Catholics in the pews, and then hopefully through that bringing young men and inspiring young men to live, as Bishop Sullivan wrote in his prayer for priestly vocations, the joy-filled and fulfilling life of a diocesan priest.
I have to say that Bishop Sullivan, I've attended most of your visits to high schools lately, and Bishop Sullivan has been great about making sure that you never get an opportunity to leave there without getting to talk about vocations a little bit. Matter of fact, you guys, I think we might have brought this up on the podcast regarding World Youth Day, but you've had the best little tchotchke to leave with the young folks when you leave. You had special sunglasses, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're... Hopefully, our listeners will start seeing young men wearing these throughout the diocese. But there are these black and white sunglasses with the white frames on the front, like a priest's collar is white on the front and black. The rest is the white on the front and black on the sides, and then it says pray for vocations and camdenpriest.org. So we've given them out to altar servers. We've given them out to high school kids. I think one of the best stories, I think I can tell this, was Father John Dolan, who is the pastor in Cape May, and he is an oblate of St. Francis de Sales, so he belongs to a religious order. His nephew is an altar server at a parish in our diocese, and I gave his nephew a pair of these sunglasses, and I said to his uncle, I said, I know you want your nephew to join the Oblates, but I want him to join the Diocese of Camden.
You know, it's funny. I recently had a priest reach out to me. He was working on the parish's website, and he wanted to put something up about. He wanted to put up an icon and a link to religious order vocations. And he goes, is that going to be a problem for you, Mike? I said, well, it's not a problem for me, but you may have to deal with the vocations office of the Diocese of Camden. So you may want to give them a heads up before you do that. And their link had better be on there with it if you're going to do that. But you know, if anybody missed that was listening to the podcast, camdenpriest.org is our vocation. So if you or someone you know is interested in becoming a priest, you know, check that out. And if it's, you know, if you think someone in your midst would be a good priest or woman religious or a male religious, you know, you really need to say something to them, because sometimes you're the call, right? I mean, sometimes, you know, God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes he works through us, and we have to encourage people that we think might have the necessary talents, maybe the calling to be that, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't the kind of thing where you can just hope that the work of God will be enough, right?
Yeah, and sometimes that's the most difficult, is approaching a young man and saying in a way that doesn't scare them off, because sometimes they hear that word, that priesthood, and it's like, well, I'm going to just stop doing what I'm doing then if this is what people are going to think. But it's just a good honor, you know, if we find a healthy young man that's, you know, active in his ministry, active in school, active in work, you know, has a balanced life. And the biggest test is always, will we want this person to minister to our family if we were sick, or if, you know, our parents were sick? Would we want this priest to be in our home ministering to them or bringing them the sacraments? Like, that's always the great, just kind of that litmus test, I guess, to see where do we kind of imagine this person serving? You know, is it, I would rather him be in a parish on the opposite side of town, or will we want him to be our pastor right there? As, you know, just a good sign of, you know, do we have trust and confidence in this young man? And they need to know that. And I think, you know, whether or not they listen to that call, just knowing that they're a good young man is, you know, important to know too, that we often don't hear those things. You know, we often hear the negative versus the positive. So we always want to encourage, especially our young people, that God has something special planned for them, and that they've been created for a reason, you know, and it's discovering that reason over time. And we see it in our families, and especially in our parishes. I mean, I'm always just in admiration of our moms and dads, the people that are living out their vocation, sometimes working 2 or 3 jobs and still making sure, again, the faith is a big part of their life. And that's where we really learn what it means to be a man and what it means to be a father.
Yeah. Father Josh, you know, in your role, you know, you were a Catholic identity director in high school for a long time, and certainly as the bishop's priest secretary now for like, what, 2 years?
A year and a half.
Yeah. You've certainly been to a lot of schools, a lot of high schools, spent a lot of time with young folks. Can you, like, when you meet someone, do you get a sense as this might be someone that I need to spend a little more time with, to talk to encourage? Like, can you kind of see, have you gotten good enough that you can see them coming?
I haven't. I haven't. I know some priests are. Some priests can call a guy out freshman year of high school and say he's going to be a priest, and sure enough, that happens. But I think, you know, you do see, as Father Adam was just saying, you see the qualities of a good priest. So you see someone who, I think, number one, takes his faith seriously and takes seriously that proposal that Father Adam just said. I've been created for a purpose, and God has a plan for me, and I need to figure out what God's plan for me is. When you see someone taking that serious, then there's a little inlet there. And maybe he's called to be a priest, maybe not. But to start seeing those signs, that is a sign, because he's ready to, to learn more and to explore what God has in store for him.
Yeah. Something you also said, Father Adam, that kind of reminded me of something you told me once before, was the importance of the parish priest. That, parish priests who keep an eye on their flock and are sort of actively looking for people who might have the priesthood in them, that really makes a big difference, right?
Yeah, just kind of paying attention and seeing who's always kind of available, who's willing to help, and who is a good help. Yeah. That's the other challenge, is that you want somebody that's going to be confident, someone that's open to learning new things, of trying new things, because that's, as we look ahead in the future, that's going to be our priesthood, is really going back out to evangelize, is going back out to try new and different things, of being those fishers of men. So there's a lot of different qualities that we look for, but seeing someone who's involved, seeing someone who's balanced, who's able to live their life and live their faith, is so important.
Yeah. So the two of you both came back from the National Vocations Directors Conference a few weeks ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was up in, is it Long Neck?
Huntington.
Well, it's Long Island.
Long Island.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good location.
It's a beautiful place. So it's the headquarters for the NCDVD, the National Conference for
Diocesan Vocation Directors.
So
just to be clear with that, there are religious order vocation directors and stuff. We were promoting diocesan vocations.
Nice.
Yeah.
So each year, this was something that Father Romano had told me about when I was coming into the office. He said the first thing you really have to do when I was coming in that July was to register for this conference, this NCDVD. And they have a special 5-day program before even the conference itself begins. They call the boot camp for any new vocation director, any new person that's in the office of vocation, that's in this vocations work, where they kind of go over the basics of how to get things started, how to kind of keep things running, and what to look for, and how to kind of build your program, manage your program. So it was my first one was awesome. It was out in Portland before the world came to a close. So that was like one of the last trips I had was out to Portland, Oregon, and it was just beautiful out there. My first time out there. And I was out there for the boot camp and then for the conference itself. And it was Father Brennan, who wrote the book To Save 1,000 Souls, was one of the keynote speakers. So it was really cool just to hear him speak and to meet him and to meet so many other vocation directors. So it's men from around our country. And this last one, I think they said like 6 countries were represented.
There were 6 countries. It was the biggest one they ever had, over 200 priests, a number of lay people who came who support their, diocesan vocations office through various ministries and doing background information. 6 countries, though.
Actually, that begs a question. Are most vocations directors priests? Are there ever lay vocations directors? I know it's...
I met one that was a lay vocation director, just because of the shortage in the diocese, where he was kind of started as an associate, and he was involved in a movement of the church too, where he was very involved in different things, qualified in that sense of having the right background and knew again about formation, and was just kind of doing it not on his own, but always working for the bishop. But he was the one leading the office, and that.
Well, I love attending conferences because I always steal other people's ideas. Matter of fact, I think I told the both of you when I came back from the Catholic Media Association conference, I sat in on the vocations director presentation, and I was blown away by his presentation. I remember thinking that at first he was very dry. He was from the Diocese of Arlington. I forget the priest's name now, but I was from the Diocese of Arlington, and it was it started out dry, and then as he kept talking, I suddenly realized I was doing everything wrong as a public relations person for vocations. That all of my great ideas I thought that were going to work were not what necessarily works. So before I come back to that, I'm curious, did you find any ideas to steal while you were at the vocations director conference?
Oh, yeah, plenty. Okay. Plenty. I think one of the greatest things is, when you go to a conference, a lot of times there are experts in that field that are up giving the talks and everything. there's no expert in the field of vocation director. We're just a bunch of priests that got appointed to this role by our bishop. And God works through that, but we kind of sit down and it's a lot of sharing what works, what doesn't work. I tried this, I tried that. Did anyone else try this? And so in that sharing, some of the interesting things that have been tried over the last few years and seem to have been working in other dioceses, and hopefully we can try here. One that I was fascinated by is a 6-week discernment group. So instead of asking guys to commit over the course of 6 months to a monthly meeting, sometimes the guy can make it, sometimes he can't make it, sometimes things come up. 6 months seems like a long time. This works especially well in high schools, in maybe parish youth ministry programs, to come in and to say, for the next 6 weeks, we're going to have a group of guys, a small group that meets together and prays together and learns about what it means to be a priest. So that even I've seen has gone from a year ago, Father Adam went to that talk at the 2022 Vocations Directors Conference, to now coming up in January, a couple publishing companies are even publishing guides specific to 6-week discernment groups. Because they found, I think, in a fast-paced world today, guys don't want to commit to 6 months. So we can commit to 6 weeks and maybe convince them to do that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about you, Father?
Yeah, so, part of my work is with formation. So for the guys that are in seminary, trying to form them to be, you're never 100% ready, but at least prepared for ministry. And one of the things that Father Josh was mentioning was the different ideas, and depending on your region, what might work in Newark might not work down here in South Jersey, and vice versa, the things that we do. And the same with, again, the things that we can do with our men that are in formation. So depending on where they're studying and what they're doing, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And I think that's one of the cool things about NCDVD, is that you see all the things that are kind of available to help them grow in their spiritual life, to help them grow in their human formation and human dimension, their pastoral dimension, and intellectual dimension of what can we do to kind of walk with these men and to encourage them to be those missionary disciples that we're going to need. And I think there's this one group that we were able to do a little bit of an outing with, CORE, that does like hikes and things out west. So they're different states, but they have again just a way of building leadership through something as natural as hiking and camping. Where guys will take different roles, and it's just a good opportunity, because again, this is what the new program of priestly formation is looking for, is how can you really challenge this man to be a man nowadays, knowing that so many things are kind of easier than they were, teaching them the basics, of teaching them things that we would have learned 50 years ago just by growing up, but now with everything so different, we're missing a lot of stuff that common things that we would have had. And so there's a lot of ways, again, of building men up. And I see the way that a lot of dioceses have used this program or other programs, and, what's going to work best for our men. It comes down to it is a lot of prayer, of thinking, what can we implement or what can we do to make sure they get those experiences, to really, again, encounter Christ, encounter what it means to be a priest, and to take that into their own discernment, to make sure that this is truly where God's calling them, where they feel that peace and that joy. When you do the thing that you love and you do the thing that you're called, you really experience it. And hopefully that's what they get throughout their time in seminary, to keep building them up and to keep to help them continue really in their formation. So
when you have your first Diocese of Camden camping trip, can we make sure we have a Star Herald photographer there? Because I think I would like to make sure that is...
Definitely. You got some experience, right, with the Boy Scouts.
I do,
so that would be
absolutely.
A good...
I got all the equipment too, so no problem.
The life-saving skills, that's going to be the big thing, is who's going to have the first aid kit. Because that first day, they're just...
somebody's getting hurt.
Yeah. So we might come back with less seminarians, but maybe they'll be a little bit stronger than before.
The strong survive. There you go.
Right.
That's it.
So
that's
That should be on our poster. Only the strong survive.
I can already see Father Joe Byerly volunteering for that stuff. He'll teach them all sorts of stuff out there.
He will.
You guys go.
How to get your own food.
No, I actually like that. I like, so when I went to the Catholic Media Conference and I saw everything that I was doing wrong, which was, my focus was in the wrong spot, apparently. It's like it wasn't so much about, I didn't need to promote the vocations department and the seminarians so much. What they said really works is you have to promote the beauty and majesty of the church. You have to do a really good job of telling faith stories, right? That potential seminarians are going to be motivated by. You don't want to be pulling the heartstrings all the time. It's got to be a balance. It's got to be a roller coaster. You bring in the highs and the lows and stuff like that. But the other thing that you got to do, and this is where I really felt like I made my mistake, was it's activating the people in the pews to look for potential candidates and then to gear them up to pray. In Arlington they have all these prayer societies specifically for seminarians. How they work with the schools is amazing. They put the pictures of the seminarians on cards and they change it every single year, and every single day of that school year the kids pray for the seminarians, and it was really wonderful. So I've already talked to the schools department about seeing how we can make that happen in the near future. Awesome. But yeah, I really like to roll out all of these great ideas. So as soon as you two can, kind of like hammer those suckers down, I want to make them happen. So thank you for that.
We'll make it happen.
I appreciate it. Because famously for 10 years we had the I Race for Vocations public event, which was always great because it brought people out publicly to pray for and to appreciate our seminarians in there, but also to encourage people to consider vocations. It was a great big public event. That event might be going to the curb at some point. We don't know, but but we're going to replace it with things that are equally as great, right, guys?
Yeah. And we're always looking to bear more fruit, and I think that's the key, is that the iRace is a great event, and that's the truth, and that it's brought out a lot of people and brought out a lot of prayers, and we need to continue that, and maybe in a different direction, but definitely in that same kind of vein of just getting it out there. Like you said, if we would truly see the beauty of the church in the iRace, in the park, and even in this past one with the rain, to be in the cathedral with 2 or 3. Since I've been involved, so that's why I'm not involved anymore. It was just beautiful to see the church. I mean, people from all over, culture, location, and that they rolled with something as crazy as that rain. That instead of just saying forget this, I'm gonna just stay home this afternoon, they came out, and a lot of them, it was the second time they were going to mass. They went to the early one so they could get to the race because the times changed, and then they still came and had a good time. So it was great to see. So
I think, Mike, as you said, you learned at your conference that you were doing everything wrong. One of the things I learned at NCDVD over the last 2 years I've been is that we don't have to do everything all at once, and that can be the wrong approach. And I think, when the bishop gave me this assignment, I thought, how do I visit every parish? How do I do this and that? And there's actually a lot of statistics about where priests come from. Really? Believe it or not, they've done a study for the last 15 or 20 years or so of the newly ordained class. One of the things they found is a lot of most priests were altar servers.
Okay.
And so at NCDVD this year, they were really pushing, a lot of guys have just said, if I can only focus on one group in the whole diocese, I'm going to focus on altar servers. If they know that statistically 75% of future priests are altar servers right now, I'm just going to focus on promoting vocations to altar servers, doing things like that. So things, as they've done these kind of studies and learned this, they said, listen, there are parishes in the diocese with fewer young people than others. And while I don't want to ignore those few young people at these smaller parishes, if I'm going to have to appropriate my time, I might be looking at visiting the larger parishes or the big youth ministry programs. not to ignore the others, but to make sure that time's being used wisely and promotion is being done, well. And so I think that's something that, as we say, okay, Father Adam said, we're got to look to what's bearing fruit.
Right.
Yeah.
No, at the end of the day, us as the human element to this, we have to do what's sensible for our limited amount of time. Fortunately, we know that the God is miraculous, and he'll take care of the ones we can't get to, unfortunately, and fortunately. But no, I think that's good, and I think there's a lot of wisdom. I'm a very strategic thinker. That was when I came here 8 years ago, that was the thing I wanted to do. And so I have my good days and my bad days. Most of the time, I like to think I'm strategic about things. I really do think that kind of stuff bears fruit. I'm very statistically minded. It's important that we run those numbers. I'm actually thrilled that someone has statistical evidence that altar servers actually bring people in. And I'll say, in my time here, I've run across a lot of pastors, and I'd say maybe about a third of them, that is actually their philosophy. They really push altar servers as the sort of like that first step towards the path of the priesthood. Just out of curiosity, were either one of you altar servers?
I was.
I was.
No, me neither. When you were young, who was your pastor?
So growing up, I have had a couple. So Monsignor Louis O'Meara was the one that baptized me, and he was there for most of my life. And then there was Father Bill Collins, who was there. And then we had, I think it was Father Paul Hart after him, and Father Tom Donio was there. And then when I kind of had my reversion, when I came back to the faith, it was Father Jaromir Mihalik who was there. Now he's in Summers Point, but he was a good influence and a good support while I was there.
He's a good ag father. He is. How about you when you were
growing up?
Yeah.
So Mike and I are from the same home parish of St. Catherine's in Clayton before they merged into Father Adam's home parish, Nativity in Franklinville. But Father William Barry, I remember when I was a little kid, and then I became an altar server when Father Ted Heinzelman was our pastor in St. Catherine's, and then Father Jaromir when I was in high school before being merged.
Right.
Yeah. I think Mike didn't know that I was an altar server because he was off at college
that's true.
when I was altar serving in St. Catherine's.
Because I am in fact old, but that's okay. But I've used you both when I've had to give presentations at St. Michael's now of the great wonder of the gift of that parish to the Diocese of Camden with such great priests as Father Adam and Father Josh. So,
It's Polish power, I think.
That's
Polish.
Yes, of course. And Father Jaromir, I have never had him on the podcast. I really should, because he is, in fact, one of my favorite priests. And my parents still talk about him and their love. And he talks about them. Like, he always remembers, always asks me about him every time I see him. I always find that to be the sign of a good pastor that, makes a note of who those people are in this parish. So you and I, Father Adam, you and I spoke just before you were leaving for the conference. As a matter of fact, you gave me a binder, and you were telling me all about how the process of this, how the seminary process was going to be changing for the seminarians. And what are these new changes? What are they called?
So the program for priestly formation, we call it the PPF, is on its 6th edition. So that's been the way that priests have been formed for the past, I don't know how many years. But when I came in and when Father Josh came in, we were under the previous edition, where it was really based on your amount of college credits, where you came in as a sophomore, junior, senior, depending on where you were in college and when you made that transition. So if you came in right out of high school, you just started as a freshman, and you were kind of told, well, you have to do 4 years undergrad and then 4 years theology. So all in all, it could be about 8 years before your ordination, which makes it easier for us because we know where to place you. We can tell you like a good limit. But the church, in her wisdom sees that might not have been the best approach right now, as the world has changed and things have changed, where it's kind of, again, focusing on forming a man into a good priest. And that means not just spiritually, but also in human factors and intellectual factors and pastoral, of how they can minister to the people. So they have kind of not reconfigured, but I guess in a sense have changed the process of how a man enters, how a man goes through, and what leads to the ordination of a man. And it begins in something called the propedeutic stage, which is propedeutic mean before your study. So before entering the seminary, it's a time to kind of learn those basic skills that we were talking about that you could learn while camping with Mike Walsh, that he could teach you a lot of these things of, basic kind of, I always say basic maintenance, like what are the things you need to learn, how to do wash, how to, basic kind of car maintenance or house maintenance, things that we often overlook because somebody else has done that for us in the past. So before we even become an official seminarian, we go through this stage so that we can kind of know what it means to be in the seminary, of what it means to be a good man. And we come in looking for certain thresholds, so a man of certain maturity, a man of certain knowledge who can understand and can be ready for college classes. And also kind of that, but the big thing that I always look for is an openness. Is this guy open to be formed, or does he come in thinking this is what a priest is, this is what a priest does, and nothing is going to change that, because that's harder to work with. So this propedeutic stage is something that begins the real journey, and this could last, there's no real, it's, 2 to 3 years. So depending on the man and where he's at, when he comes to us and where he ends up, it's kind of all up in the air, where it's wanting to make sure the man is properly formed so that he can go on to the next stage. And that's something that takes not only our input, but also the input of the seminary that we send them to, that there's a lot of things that they look for, they call them thresholds, things that have to be met before you can advance to that next stage. So the days are gone where you could say 8 years and you're definitely going to be ordained, to now it could be 10 years, there's no real limit. And that's, I think, good, where it takes the pressure off the man and also off of us, that we're not just rushing a person through just for the numbers. We're really looking for a qualified person who's willing to take the time and really to enter into it. So that propedeutic stage is that first stage that they enter, where they really kind of learn what it means to pray, what it means to be a man of God. And I think it's an important stage. But that's the one that's kind of been throwing everything off, because it's how is this implemented and how is this done? And there's a couple different ways that the program of priestly formation sees it happening. And we do ours a little bit different than other dioceses would do theirs. But the hope is always the same, that we're forming this man into something good and something that's going to help him as he, God willing, continues through his formation. But this all depends on a lot of different factors that happen in his own heart, hopefully by learning to pray, learning what it means to pray as a priest would, so learning the liturgy of the hours, learning about spiritual direction, seeing the importance of confession in their lives, and how to really, again, use these gifts, these treasures that the church has to help them to discern and help them to figure out, where is God calling me, and why is he calling me here, and how can I be that best priest, how can I be that best man of God to serve.
And this really shouldn't come as a shock. I mean, for any young adult, I certainly remember my 20s. That's where I learned who I was and where I was going to go, and all the wrong decisions I made in the 20s, in my 20s, as to, things I thought I was going to be versus what I am. Listen, I went to college to be a history teacher. I am not teaching history, and I've taught history for exactly 1 year over my 25-year career, and it turns out it was meant for something else completely. But I didn't have a process for that. I was just kind of winging it. So it's good that this exists, particularly when it's so important. Yeah,
and the goal is always for a man to enter. It's with that thought, I'm going to be a priest, not I don't really know what I'm going to do or what to do now. I don't have a job. I don't have anything going on, so I'll just join the seminary, which is something that we hear often. It's well, why do you want to join? Well, I got really nothing nothing else going on, so I figured this would be a good thing. And you kind of appreciate it because they want to grow in holiness and they see the seminary as that, but it's not so much that case. We want a man that comes in saying, I want to be a priest, and I really see it happening, whether it's 8 years, whether it's 10 years. And I want to be open to growing and to learning more about it versus someone that's just kind of unsure.
I think also as this PPF 6 has come out, and Father Adam alluded to it, it's really changed it away from just the what year are you in to these thresholds. The other stages have been renewed in a way, not changed so much, but been renewed. So after this propedeutic stage, which is that preparation stage to really enter into formal seminary studies, in the past we used to talk about a guy was in philosophy or he was in theology, or sometimes they would use the phrase minor seminary, major seminary, college seminary, pre-theology, but philosophy and theology, and they've changed the name of those stages to be the discipleship stage for minor seminary, for college. If you say someone's in college seminary, they're a college student, right? But to put that name, this is the discipleship stage. And they're still studying philosophy. They're still learning what they need to learn. But the overarching focus there is becoming a disciple of Jesus, becoming a follower of Jesus, and doing that really well. That's what the very first seminary was when Jesus called the 12. He said, "Come follow me." And so it's taking that emphasis off of the academics. Not that that's unimportant. It's still there. It's still a big part of it. But it's putting the focus on being a follower of Jesus. Then what we used to call major seminary now is going to start to be called the configuration stage. So it's taking what a guy has learned as a disciple of Jesus and helping that guy to configure his life to Jesus. When in theology we say the priest is in persona Christi, the priest acts in the person of Christ. So all of that, what used to be kind of a focus on, I got to learn a lot of theology to be a priest. Now the focus is I need to configure my life to be like Jesus, because if I'm ordained, when I'm ordained, I will be standing in the person of Christ. And all of that then will kind of end with this vocational synthesis stage. So that will actually not be done at a seminary, but in a parish. And it'll be, a man will be ordained a transitional deacon, so he'll be a deacon for a few months to a year after he's done his studies, and he'll be living in a parish really to incorporate everything he's learned and then take that with parish ministry and start to put it into practice still before priestly ordination, though. I think sometimes guys get ordained priests and they're kind of thrown in the deep end right away. And all of a sudden right away now you have all these masses and everything. Yeah. Whereas this will give a guy a chance to ease into priestly life and life in a parish he's ordained, he's a deacon, but in a more gradual way.
Yeah, that's the stage I think I'm most excited for, because I think it's just a great thing. Like Father Joshua was just saying, as soon as you're done seminary, like the first thing you have to do is move out of the seminary, and then you don't know where you're going yet, so all your stuff is kind of in boxes, either at your parents' house, a friend's house, family's house, as you're waiting your assignment. And then once you get your assignment, it's a couple weeks, and the past 2 years or 3 years, guys haven't been getting their assignments till July, which left this whole month open where they got a temporary assignment where they had to go to another place for a month to help out. And again, you're put in a parish that's busy where you're able to exercise this new ministry. But this new synthesis stage really allows a guy to take it all in, like to be at a parish as a deacon, to know the way of life that's going on there now, and then just to gradually kind of assume that identity, that priestly identity is so important, where you're able to just take those things in and kind of go right into the process. It's not like you're being pulled out and then put into another place that could be the complete opposite, of where you were just at. But this allows you to really understand your priesthood and to, exercise that priestly ministry in a place that you already know, in a place that's already familiar to you.
Oh, I like that. I didn't realize that was going on. That's great.
Yeah, ideally, once, and this will come into effect over a few years as kind of guys are grandfathered in, but ideally what will happen is that the assignment that a guy has for vocational synthesis will also be his first assignment as a priest. And so, during that time, that period of 6 months to a year when he is a transitional deacon, he'll be connected to the seminary, maybe going to the seminary once a month or so for workshops and stuff, meeting with his classmates still. But, Father Adam, as you were just talking about right now, that transition into being a newly ordained, it made me think, imagine if you had, you got married, you moved into a new house, you got a new job in a new state all at once. That would be a big transition. And that's what right now priestly ordination has been like. You're all of a sudden, you're newly ordained, you're unpacking your boxes after moving out of the seminary, you're living with a new pastor, you're meeting a new community, you're doing all of this, saying Mass and hearing confessions for the first time. It's a big shift.
Yeah.
And so this is envisioning helping to make that transition a little bit more humane, maybe.
That's a good way of putting it. Are the seminaries up to speed with this new process?
Yeah, that's the big challenge. A lot of them are, but like Father Josh said, it's kind of figuring out who's going to get grandfathered into what part. Because to think about it, up until this past year, guys were on that track of, this is what you need to graduate, this is what you need for your master's in divinity and for ordination. So their whole 4 years, if they were in theology, was planned that you're going to have classes every semester for the next 4 years to get ordained at the end of your third year, and then priesthood end of your fourth year. So it's a lot of kind of shifting around, because the guys that are, say, in second theology are halfway through that, and to try to shift that again is going to mess up their schedule of what classes they need. And it just kind of throws a lot of things off, where it wouldn't be possible to do in a year and a half what you would have to do in 2 full years, because we're taking at least 5 or 6 classes a semester for graduate study. So that's a lot to pile onto a person just to kind of catch them up. So it's kind of, imperfect right now, where we're just looking to see who's going to get grandfathered in and where can we start this process for the next, the next possible group. So it's a lot that goes into it, and just a lot of different challenges that, you don't really think about until it's happening.
And I will say I'm grateful that Father Adam is the one working with the formation of seminarians. He's had a focus on this at NCDVD, while I got to go to all the fun talks about how to run altar server parties and hang out with college students. He was going to talks about, what is the propaedeutic? What are people doing during it? How do you run a vocational synthesis stage? What do you look for in a pastor who's going to be working with a deacon in that? He was going to those very business talks. I was going to all the fun ones, and we were talking about what's the best, dinner to serve at a Project Andrew dinner, and is chicken parm or baked ziti better to encourage priests?
Chicken parm, right?
I think so.
Okay. Speaking to the seminarians we have right now, I've had the pleasure of being able to hang out with them a bit over the years, and I have to say our elder seminarians are great guys and seem to be quite with it. I have no fear at all that they will make this transition positively. I actually very much look forward to all of them becoming priests, because they really are a bunch of great guys. Yeah. I have to say, you've done well, Father Adam. They've all turned into,
I can only take partial credit.
They've all become, at this point, good Catholic gentlemen. And we talk about this from time to time as well. The discernment process is the discernment process, and sometimes people discern out, which is fine. And actually, Father Josh and I were at St. Augustine Prep for Mass that Bishop was celebrating there on the Feast of All Saints. And, we had, as he often does after the Mass, he met with student leaders. And he told the story about how, there was a great seminarian in their midst who has since become a great Catholic gentleman, and Bishop was invited to the wedding when he married his wife, and it was a beautiful wedding. They're a wonderful, devout family now. But that's part of the process too, and it's I know vocation directors, it makes you guys sad anytime somebody leaves, but the knowledge of knowing that you've created a good Catholic gentleman is something there too. So, the process is the process, and I tell people, young people I speak to, don't be afraid of starting the process, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to become a priest. It means you're finding out about yourself, and maybe this does exist. And maybe they find out it doesn't. Or maybe they find out that they would rather be a part of a religious order or, or just want to be single. Right, Father?
Exactly.
Just want to be single. The single life. That's an inside joke. Check out Father Josh has a great column in this week's Catholic Star Herald. So you got to make sure you check it out because he did a really good job. And most importantly, the ending of the column is the most important one. The most important part where he tells you, if you're interested in becoming a priest, contact him.
Exactly.
Go to camdenpriest.org to find out more about how to contact Father Josh and then eventually work with Father Adam. Right.
Yeah, so it really is a good article. So I just read it today. So UPS, when I was like, this is going to be awesome for my preaching this weekend, which is exciting because as we start this Vocations Awareness Week, our seminarians will be speaking at some of these
excited
fairs.
about that. Oh, which reminds me, I need you guys to let me know where they're going to be speaking because I usually like to take a photograph.
Oh, I'll send you. Yeah,
send me a list.
I think by the time the podcast comes out, some people will have heard them speak. Some people will not. Let me tell you this story. Last year on this weekend, I had mass at a parish and then took my parents out to breakfast after. They had a seminarian speaking at their parish. And as we were sitting in Geet's Diner in Williamstown, one table over and one back, this mom was talking to her little boy and he was drawing on the placemat. She said, "What are you drawing?" He said, "I'm drawing a priest."
Nice.
And he had just listened to the seminarian give his story. So I emailed the seminarian. I said, "You better be at that guy's ordination in about 20 years."
Oh, that makes me very happy. That's actually that's one of my favorite things is to go out to a meal and hear, like, because I live in Glassboro, which is Rowan University's area, and I have more than once gone to dinner at the former PB Diner, now the Monarch Diner, and we'll have like a group from Rowan Catholic Campus Ministry having this deep theological discussion, like one table over from me. Famously, I remember my wife and I were sitting there and we were listening to them talk, and they were completely wrong. Like all of their perspective on everything was wrong. And my wife Jennifer goes, "Should we go over there and talk to them?" I was like, No. That will just stifle them. It doesn't matter if they're wrong right now. Father, whoever the pastor was at the time in Glassboro, will take care of that the next time because they will definitely come to him with questions. But the fact that they're having this conversation in public, that makes me so happy right now. And
great.
We're the only ones that know they're wrong. So it's perfectly fine. I have no idea what they were saying that they were wrong, but I was listening to it, laughing and thinking, this is great. This makes me very happy. So just know, people, feel free to talk about your faith publicly and proudly. Have those conversations, even if you're wrong.
And you never know who's eavesdropping on you.
And if it's in the Monarch
podcast you'll end up on.
If it's in the Monarch Diner, it's probably me. But no, we like that. And we also like when we see our priests out having a meal. Like that's always great. Do you guys enjoy it when you guys are out in public and someone comes up and says hi?
Yeah, a few years ago I was with my family and someone came up to me and said, "Hi, Father Nevitt," and my siblings looked at me and said, "Do you know everyone?"
Well, that's like, actually, you probably have it toughest because I find that people...
That was before I had this assignment, though.
Oh, okay. Well, no. Well, that's what I was going to say, because you're all over creation. Plus, you were a teacher at a high school for several years, which makes it very difficult because those kids get older and they change. They look differently. They have different hairstyles and all sorts of stuff. So that happened as the son of two teachers. Former students would come up and say hi all the time, and my mom had perfected acknowledging them without ever knowing who they actually were. But that's very sweet. So yes, go up and say hi to your local priest. Ask for their autograph. Would you like,
right.
Father Adam? Do you get asked for autograph very often? I'll ask for mine.
No, I don't get asked for autographs. But it is great when you see people outside and when they come up to you, and even at the end of Mass, just taking that time to shake the priest's hand and just to thank him for the Mass, but to know that they appreciate you being there, and again, that gives them an opportunity just to get to know you. And that's what we really need is to build those communities and to see, again, the faith that's still there, something that hasn't disappeared. And we need to build each other up in that.
That's right. That's why, I say all the time, I want to see our priests out there being as public as humanly possible. I want you guys at every single event out in the public. But I'm also not the one that has to, drink all that coffee to make sure you guys are awake.
That's right.
Well, everybody, thank you very much for tuning into this episode, and thank the two of you very much for being on it. I really appreciate that. I hope you guys have a successful Vocations Awareness Week. And as always, if you are interested in becoming a priest or know someone who is, go to camdenpriest.org.